I notice everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses. I'm not as outgoing as most people. I'm more introspective and kind of concentrate more on the technical aspects of my research.
Okay.
But like I said, I'll try and make it as interesting as possible. We're talking about the brain, and your brain is really your most precious organ. I mean, you can even get a heart transplant, but you cannot get a brain transplant. I mean, this is what makes you you, and this is the owner's manual for your brain. And it's kind of an interesting story about the title of my presentation: Peace in the Brain, Moral Choices, and Neuroanatomy. And neuroanatomy is the anatomy of the brain. I actually had a senior moment and did not include a title with my abstract, but luckily Ditto was sharp enough and knew enough about my work that
he's younger.
he created a title, and like I said, it's they're two very different things, your mind and your brain. But I think through the measured approach that I'm going to provide, I think I'll be able to make a good case for what we're talking about here. So one of the aspects of my research is, I didn't have a slide for this, but it's the unified hierarchy of the virtues and the values. You got the cardinal virtues, theological virtues, classical Greek values. I thought maybe I would put it up here. There, so you can. This is where we're going to end up now, with and you know, there's a peace is the very highest level down below there. So anyway, but like I said, I wanted to start with the first part of the title, the brain and how it relates to the mind. And there's very much debate going back through philosophy. Descartes says, "I think, therefore I am," and he postulated that the mind was located in the brain, in the third eye region in the brain. And there's been many more improvements since then. And probably one of the most popular is Paul MacLean's theory of the triune brain, where he postulated that there's like a reptilian brain. This is like a side view. And like a lizard or a snake, you have the spinal cord, and then you have the brain stem where the has to do with the head, and then there's a very small brain, very basic, that deals with mostly with the sense of smell and how it relates to vision. But you know, as lizards, they basically eat and reproduce and survive, and that's about it. And then you have the proto-mammalian brain now. A lot of people call that the limbic system, where a lot of the emotions, and it ties in with, you know, sometimes smells evoke emotions, and it's a very outside part of the diagram up there too. But finally, when you get to the higher mammals, and especially the primates and man, you get the neo-mammalian cortex. And so he has the three different levels, but like I said, there's been some very big, vast improvements here that, let me get my pointer out here. Like I said, there's Sanides, he proposed that the cortex, this is your whole cerebral cortex folded flat. that show that there's growth rings that come out like this, but they're more differentiated. And here's what they're called here. I had to really expand some of these levels. They're so primitive, just to fit the numbers in. But then as you go out for the first two, then you get it. All this here is the neocortical part, and these this is a very these white areas are the ones that are unique to man, and maybe like the chimpanzee is starting in that. And these are all the language areas. This is Broca's area, and this allows us to communicate and about ethics and morality and invent language. Because some of the chimpanzees are able to learn sign language, but man is the only one that can really put sentences together and allow conferences like this. So, but the most basic outcome of this kind of diagram, we pull up the
you want the next diagram?
Yeah, the next diagram. Anyway, I've developed this, this one right here. I've developed this dual parameter grid that it's like what the periodic table of elements did for chemistry. This promises to do for neuroanatomy. And here you can see, yeah, that's great. This, these are the most ancient areas here on the periphery, and then as you go down to this jagged line is now the very newest areas here, and this is where you get the language, and then these back areas from here on back. These are all these are the visual areas. This is the hearing, and this is your sense of touch here. And those that you got, and then everybody talks about the prefrontal cortex, where you do planning and initiate emotional matters of an emotional nature. And here this all fits in well with the dual parameter grid. And these numbers here, these are the different cortical areas that Broca named. He gave them numbers, and this is another system. And down below are the nuclei within the thalamus. And the thalamus is the relay that relays these cortical inputs. It relays them to the neocortex. I know this is technical, but like I said, every owner's manual is a little technical. But this allows you break down. This is my own triune system. You have the senses from the outside, which are exteroceptive. You know, vision, hearing, and touch. Touch is technically out system, and then once you get these sensations, they relate to the prefrontal cortex, which deals with the emotions and also with the limbic system. So it gives you an emotional valence there. You say, hey, that ice cream cone looks good. I'm going to get some satisfaction out of that. And then finally, this is transferred over to the motor areas here. And these control your muscles and allow you to move and operate on your environment so you can reach your goals. So it's basically a three-part system where you go sensory, your interior sense, and then you got your, and then this motor cortex has a lot of feedback loops. So it helps you balance, and you know where your limbs are on all times. So every one of these areas has feedback loops going back to your sensory organs, and the brain is just a fabulous evolutionary advantage. And like I showed, it all started with the reptiles and this newer area here. This when we started becoming social. A lot of the mammals would hang out in groups and prides and packs, and then man is the supreme social animal, over 7 billion now, which we couldn't have done without language and all those great things. So anyway, like I said, you're probably saying to yourself, how am I going to tie back to these virtues and values now? And like I said, we owe that to a lot of the medieval philosophers and stuff that have come before us. You know, starting in the Middle Ages, they allowed us to have the Industrial Revolution and make life as easy as it is right now. Before I go on, I wanted this dual parameter grid. I was lucky enough to present that to the National Institutes of Health that's running the President Obama's Brain Initiative. It's this five-year big signature project. You know, they're going to spend billions over the next 5 years and try and really make some kind of user manual possible as far as, like I said, the applications to the mental disorders and Alzheimer's and everything. This might be maybe one of the legs on that, and I'm very excited to be part of that. Anyway, but I wanted to tie in just briefly before I'm done. Like I said, I talked about the extraceptive, then the interoceptive, then the proprioceptive, where it controls controls your behavior. You get your impulse, and then you have a feedback from what you did in the environment. So it's a constant feedback, and like I said, the medieval philosophers, they had an idea on this. They called it intentionality. Carol probably knows, has been exposed to this. You have your I, ego, or your consciousness, your executive function, and you intend something in the environment. And usually there's an emotional aspect to that, where you're maybe desiring something in the environment. And we can really actually show in the brain how this all cycles basically through. But this new advance here on the dual parameter grid, this takes it really to the next level, where you can actually each of these cortical areas are maybe the size of a postage stamp, but they're just packed with nerve cells, and they all interact with each other. Maybe you could bring up I have a slide here that shows this one right here, yeah. That shows the cross section of the cerebral cortex and the different variations that come. Each of these, this whole length of this diagram is only maybe 3 millimeters, maybe the size of the white on your fingernail, white part. But it's like each of these is the size of a grain of sand, these nerve cells. So, and here this this is the visual system here. And notice you have all these sensory cells that take the signals from your eyes and process them, and then they're called granular because they're just loaded with all these incoming cells. And then you have the outgoing. This is called the agranular. This is your motor cortex here. And notice there aren't that many granule cells. These are all huge effector neurons that they're so big because they send an axon all the way down from your brain to your spinal cord and your legs, which is 3 feet. For a little tiny size of a grain of sand, it has huge axons. So that's why it's so important to keep your nutrition up, because the brain uses like 20% of all your metabolic output, even though it's only 5% of the mass of your body. So, and this is also the frontal cortex here too, the prefrontal, and that one has to do a lot with the emotions and stuff. So, to summarize that, got ahead of myself here. So this is the very first steps in, like I said, a grand unified theory that unites the physical, the actual brain you can put under a microscope, and the interior life that we live, the behaviors, the passions, the emotions that we have that all fit so well with the virtues and values. What I talk about, it's like I said, it's a three-way system. There's one philosopher that said, I learn, which is I learn about the outside. I yearn, which is about the passions, and I earn, which is your behaviors and how you're going to make a difference in the world and make the world better for everyone else too. And so what I was showing you previously now is only one of the hemispheres. You have a matching hemisphere. There's one that deals with language, and there's one that reflects on the language and all your emotions. So when you bring the two hemispheres together, that's where we can get the virtues and the values. You have like the positive emotions, and then the peace, and as opposed to conflict resolution, which is one of my specialties. You can actually, it's really too far ahead to try and expand, show exactly those connections, but I would like to assure you that those connections are also there. And I wanted to basically focus on the brain part because, like I said, that's where we do all our living. And so let's see. I have one last slide here. Yeah, so this is the thalamus. This is the part in the brainstem below the cortex, and down here you have all the inputs. Like I said, over here you have the retina in the eye, and you have all the senses from your fingers and your toes and everything. They all come up, and this is like I just said before. This is the relay center, and this is also dramatically expanded in concert with the growth rings in the cortex. So like this is from the work of Rolf Hassler, and he proposed there's he's got the 6 levels here, which I schematically diagram here, and this is the very newest area here, which deals with language and emotion, empathy among all our fellow people in society, because the complexity of keeping a whole stable of friends and interacting is, you hear the lateral geniculate relays the visual, and then that goes up to the cortex. So go on, like I said, you can see the whole span of evolution just by looking in your brain, looking at the brain slices. And that's why the main theory is that consciousness has evolved. I know a lot of you have pets, and you know that your dog is pretty much aware and is in your social circle there in your family, but they don't have the language and also the very newest consciousness that is developed that we are fortunate enough to have and to move forward. But the point I would like to leave with is that we are all one continuum. If you take anything away from all of this technical description here, it's that we have to take care of the environment, and we have to be respectful of keeping the rest of the planet and the other biome functional, because they are our cousins, our relatives, and we're all one big family, and that goes double for the family of man. Thank you very much.
John, you want to show a video?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, we can show that one.
And while we're getting ready, you can answer some questions. But what's the website?
Oh, yeah, I have, my website is forbrain.org. It's a kind of easy one to remember. F-O-R-E brain.org. Yeah, I know this is pretty technical, but yes, go ahead.
Very interesting description of what's going on in our brain as an evolutionary organ.
Uh-huh.
And how is it related to building peace? Because many of our actions you said are intentional, but there can be something that comes as a package of how over the millennia or hundreds of thousands of years of evolution that we develop certain behavioral patterns, aggression or defense mechanisms, and then on so on and so forth. So that has brought us now with the culture of violence that I talked about and so on and so forth. So what you're saying is that we need to take into account of our biological apparatus, and then our socialization, and then the way that we built up our civilizations and so on and so forth. So how would you tie all these things together to build a culture of peace, to take into account our own biological upbringing and to something that we want to achieve in an intentional manner? So could you tie all these things together? That's what I'm confused about. Human beings as a social being as well, not just a biological being.
Well, I'm telling you, the best of the academic community, they're probably equally as confused. But my new approach, and I didn't have time to get into it, but it's all based in behaviorism, behavioral psychology. You have stimulus, response, and you see that in the spinal cord. The sensory nerves come in from the top, and then the actions come out it's processed in the gray matter, and then the behaviors come out the bottom. And I show that even through the cortex, it's that pattern is retained. And so if you can demonstrate the stimulus response in the cortex, I also base my virtues and values in behavioral psychology, see? So that is where they tie in. They tie in to, I know the Skinnerian psychology is kind of fallen out of favor, but if you scroll down, there's some links on the side there. So my common unifying, there it is, 5-minute video, up a little, down a little bit. See clip 2. Okay, maybe this video will help, then I'll take some more questions.
Okay, I think you better take the questions first.
Okay. Yeah, we still have 10 minutes left. Wanted to get back to the laser pointer anyway. Anybody else totally befuddled, or I know I had to throw it out pretty fast there, you know. And I still really missed a large part of it. Okay, yeah, this is the opening pane here.
Let's use the mic.
Okay. See, evolution, I put that right on top. Announcing the introduction of the first periodic table for the human forebrain, which enjoys similar advantages to the dramatic influence that the periodic table of elements has enjoyed with respect to chemistry and physics. This respective neural counterpart imparts a crucial sense of systematic order and purpose to the fragmented state of affairs currently prevailing within the neurosciences. The cerebral cortex represents the most logical initiation point for such an innovation, celebrated as the crowning culmination of human forebrain evolution. This radical expansion of the neocortex is observed to occur in a discrete pattern suggestively termed cortical growth rings. The general pattern of neural evolution specifies that older structures are periodically modified to create newer functional areas, with the precursor circuitry also preserved, all persisting side by side. The stepwise repetition of these processes over the course of mammalian evolution ultimately accounts for the 6 sequential age levels of cortical evolution, schematically depicted. This representation depicts the entire surface of the cortex folded flat, so that the medial and subtemporal surfaces are fully exposed. Returning to the dual parameter grid, the 2 fundamental variables defining forebrain evolution are the parameters of phylogenetic age and input specificity. The precise number of elementary levels has accurately been determined for both basic forebrain parameters. Sanides, 1972, proposed that the human cortex evolved as a sequence of 5 concentric growth rings comprising a medial-lateral hemisphere gradient. Furthermore, the interoceptive, exteroceptive, and proprioceptive input categories each project to their own 4-part complex of cortical bands that, when taken collectively, define an antero-posterior hemisphere gradient. The evolutionary gradient extending from the archicortex via the cingulate gyrus is shown in more detail here.
essentially the top half of the dual parameter grid. Here, when the paracoronal variable of phylogenetic age is plotted as the ordinate, and the parasagittal parameter of input specificity charted as the abscissa in a Cartesian coordinate system, the resulting dual parameter grid depicted is spatially oriented in a pattern analogous to the standard cortical representation. The evolutionary gradient extending from the paleocortex via the insular lobe is similarly shown in more detail here. The bottom half of the dual parameter grid. This version similarly shows that the human cortical parcellation schemes of Brodmann, 1909, and von Economo, 1929, correlate topographically on essentially a one-to-one basis with the dual parameter grid. Each cortical area described by Brodmann and von Economo corresponds to schematically unique age and input parameter coordinates. Furthermore, each affiliated thalamic nucleus of specific age and input coordinates projects principally to that cortical area comprising identical pair coordinate values, implying that the evolution of both the dorsal thalamus and the cortex are similarly defined in terms of the specifics of the dual parameter grid. More details posted at forbrain.org.
Okay, any more questions after that? That was more technical. I use more technical terms there for the rest of my colleagues and everything. I just like to let everybody know that there's a lot of promise out there for the strides we're making, and we all owe President Obama a big debt of gratitude, because he realizes, how important the brain is, not only for our economy, and all the new technologies that will come out of it. He compares that to the genome project, but this, whereas there's only 4 base pairs in DNA, this is like 100,000 times more complex. So it will take a while, but the promise is there, and most of you guys are young in the audience, but we're going to have the cure for Alzheimer's in it, and probably even old age by the time you get middle age or whatever. So I'm really optimistic about the world, even with some of the hot spots we have. I think, like I said, we all do our part, and we're going to come out the other side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we have the lights on, please? Okay, so thank you very much, John. So we've finished, I think, this morning's session. Through the lunchtime, we'll be going around checking the departure details of you. Okay? Confirm. And lunch we are having, you can turn it off.
You don't want to be videotaped?
Not now. It's not important to record.